Rami, now please welcome Mayor Dan Pike.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say how great it is to see students getting engaged once again in paying attention to the college. The start of the Washington student lobby. We had a lot of people upset about actually massive tuition increases. So some things don't change. But you know, I think a little history is good. When my father went to college in the 1950s, the government paid 90% of the cost of education. That was before you paid tuition or anything else.
Wow.
And because he got GI Bill, he was actually able to get by pretty comfortably, going to school and working part-time and going to his classes. By the time I was in school in the early 80s, the amount that government paid had dropped down to about 70%, 75%. And now, as you just heard from Iris, it's down to about 30%. And what's happening is that more and more they're transferring costs that used to be borne by society because they recognize the benefits. Like in the 1980s when we were forming the Washington Student Lobby, we did some analysis and we found studies that showed that for every dollar that government spent on higher education, they got an 8-fold return in increased taxes over that person's lifetime from making more money, being a more productive member of society. But instead now, they're trying to recapture that increased wages that you're earning over your lifetime, and instead you pay it in fees for student loans, you pay it in the interest on the loans, and you pay it because you have to take more time to go to school because there's no longer as many classes available. You know, as the speakers have been saying, the system right now is rigged for the folks that have the money. And the way that it's going to change is by people continuing to have conversations like this. One of the things that makes me really angry right now is when I look at what's going on in Olympia, when I look at what's going on in D.C., and the Republicans are driving the conversation and the Democrats are allowing that conversation to be framed wrongly. So instead of, so you know, I'll use myself as an example. As mayor, I get paid about $125,000 a year. To me, that's a pretty good income. It's about half what I'd be paid in the private sector managing a similar organization. But the last 2 months of every year, because of the way our system is set up, I don't pay any Social Security taxes. When people say that Social Security is going broke, first of all, it's not going broke, but the reason there's any problem at all is because people like me don't pay taxes on every bit of our income. And even more importantly, hedge fund traders that make $40 million a year don't pay taxes on the last 51 weeks of the year of income plus. And all we have to do is change that simple fact, and Social Security is solvent. When we talk about the fact that we're in a lot of trouble financially as a country, that we've got trillions of dollars in debt, and yet we're not allowed to even mention the word tax increase, even a very modest increase, back to the levels it was under Ronald Reagan, for the very, very richest people who benefit the most from the system that we have in our society, then of course you can't solve a problem. And especially you can't solve it when the way that you fund a war is you give people tax cuts and say go shop at Walmart. So what we need to do is we need to change the dialogue, and it starts with groups like this. And it will require persistence. So I want to thank everyone here for being here. And I say as this keeps going on in the weeks ahead, try to bring your friends down with you. And just keep the conversation going. My belief is that this conversation is going to have to go at least through the next presidential election, so that during the course of that election, it changes the tone of the election, so that people, instead of thinking they have to cater to the right, start thinking about catering to right thinking, which is what this is all about. So again, I just want to say thanks for being engaged. I also want to say thank you for being for the tenor of this protest. I have a long history, as Dwayne has alluded, he's got a long history in nonviolence and in protest. I do too. I actually spent time in jail in Connecticut for protesting building nuclear submarines. But I was never convicted. They turned me out after a week. And I protested him against the Iran-Contra actions that Ronald Reagan was doing. But I think that one of the tenets that I believe very strongly in is that there's a lot of power in nonviolent protest. And I think, I don't know who's seen the movie Gandhi, but I think it's portrayed really clearly there that if you have the strength to protest and stand up nonviolently against things that are wrong, it may take time, but at the end of the day, you have a tremendous amount of power. And I'll also say that as a public official who has to deal with keeping order in the city at the same time as sometimes there's cause to be angry, I really appreciate both the way you guys have dealt with things and also the way that our police department has dealt with it. I think our police have been very sensitive and tried to work with you. And I want to say I really appreciate both sides of that equation working very positively. And it's one of these that makes me really proud to be the mayor of this community, because I think this is a community that understands that's a dialogue that we can have. It doesn't have to be police against protesters. It can be everybody working for a common goal of promoting safety while also promoting the message. So thank you all for what you're doing. I really, really appreciate what you're trying to do, and I support the goals that you're trying to get that move forward, to change the dialogue in this country so we can have rational policies that promote the betterment of our society by promoting education, by providing a real safety net once again, and by stopping the promotion of corporations over people. Thank you all very much.